Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Workstation Wednesday. I'm Tracy King, also known as the Bulletin Board Lady, and tonight I'm talking about a couple of workstations for non-pitched percussion instruments, and I'm also going to share a book activity that I do before I do these workstations. So for those of you that are just joining for the first time, my name is Tracy King, and I blog at mrskingrocks.blogspot.com. You can find me on Twitter as @TracyKing, and you can find me on Instagram as the Bulletin Board Lady. And obviously you found me on Facebook if you're watching this right now. So I hope that you'll connect with me on some of the other social media platforms. Instagram I try to post to almost daily, and Twitter is hit and miss every now and then. I do like to join in a great Twitter conversation, so if you're part of one of those, be sure to tag me so I can join in sometime. All right, so hey, let's get started. I had a first grade classroom teacher come to me one time and say, I have this box full of instruments and I love music, but when I let my kids use it, I kind of want to like kill myself because it is noisy and it is chaotic and what can I do? Well, first of all, yay for a classroom teacher coming to say, how can I incorporate music into my classroom in a way that totally makes sense and is musical and is still beneficial for whatever curricular goals I may have. Yes! So one of my first suggestions was to take books and use the instruments to add sound effects to them. Now, as music teachers, y'all are like, pshaw, we do that all the time. But for her, that was kind of a new idea. And then I said, what if you had a resource that you could use to put in your rhythm instrument station that your kids would play something more organized instead of just chaos while they're there, so they can still explore the instruments, but it wouldn't just, make you want to throw yourself under the milk truck. And so one of those stations was developed that just let the kids play through a simple chart, and it was organized and they worked together, and she loved it. And what do you know, it was something that already had worked in my classroom as well. So this evening I'm going to share with you about that station. And yes, it is awesome for your regular classroom teachers if you want to turn them on to that. And I'm also going to share with you an activity that I teach before, or that I teach as a review for percussion, non-pitched percussion instruments before we would do the workstation. So the book that I'm going to talk about tonight is This is the House That Jack Built. And I love this illustrator. Love. He has done several other books that have really great pictures. You probably know the I Know an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly version by him too. That's really cool. And they have kind of all of these like wisecracking little things around the edges and on the side that makes it interesting. So I've used this book with all different grade levels. I've done this activity with second grade and with fourth grade. And I know that's kind of a big jump, but my fourth graders were working on 6/8 time, and I really needed a piece that would really get them involved and really making music. And so I started with this, and we kind of used it as a speech piece. So I'm just going to read a couple of pages. This is one of those stories that builds upon each line, kind of like I Know an Old Lady. I'm going to tell you a little funny and like slightly inappropriate story about that. So a long time ago, when I was younger and foolisher, maybe, or more foolish, I was teaching my first graders the I Know an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly. And then we wrote our own verses to that. I know an old lady who swallowed an iPad, and I know an old lady who swallowed a dinosaur. And then, each verse would get smaller or get larger and larger. And the kids loved the activity. And so I had them draw illustrations to go on with their picture. And I'm the bulletin board lady. So I totally wanted to make sure that I made a bulletin board of all of their groovy illustrations. So after we had finished rewriting the I Know an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly version into whatever, I had them just make a little illustration. I told them we're going to make a big old lady on the bulletin board, and we are going to put all of your new and interesting and creative ideas inside of it, and let's see if we can inspire others. And so I made the old lady out of like big sheets of bulletin board paper, and I put it up, and I put all of their cute little pictures. Oh my gosh, they were just amazing. And then I put the title, I Know an Old Lady Who Swallowed. Yeah. I can't believe I did that. And I just went home because it was a fabulous bulletin board. And it never occurred to me that I Know an Old Lady Who Swallowed was inappropriate. And so the assistant principal caught me first thing the next morning. And she's like, "What are you thinking?" So I just changed it to I Know an Old Lady Who, and then we left all of the little pictures in there. So anyway, funny story that's totally off topic of what we're doing tonight, but talking about that song reminded me of a pretty funny, not embarrassing, it takes a lot to embarrass me, but so glad she caught it before a lot of other adults caught it, because I did not mean to be inappropriate. I mean, sometimes I do. Y'all know, you watch this, so you get that. But, whew. Okay, so The House That Jack Built. This actually has a video to go with it on Amazon Prime. So if you are an Amazon Prime member, you can put in, this is the house that Jack built. Oh, it's not the scary one, though. Oh, don't watch that one. This one looks cartoony, and like you can see this kind of illustrations in it. The other one is something like a grisly horror story. So apparently Jack's not a good boy in that movie. So don't get that one. So this is the house that Jack built. This is the house that Jack built. This is the cheese that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the rat that ate the cheese that lived in the house that Jack built. And then there was a cat and a dog and a cow and a maiden and a man, and I don't know, it all ends with a farmer and a special guest at the end of the book. So if you haven't checked this out, it's worth reading. I found that my second graders and fourth graders that I've used this activity with, they had never heard The House That Jack Built. So that seemed a bit unusual to me, but they quickly learned to love it. The first thing that we did with the book was I would read through it the first time. And it has kind of a natural meter to it. So after a few verses, like after we get to like the cat that killed the rat that ate the cheese that lay in the house that Jack built, I would have them gently tap the beat on their laps. This is the cat that chased the rat that ate the cheese that lay in the house that Jack built. And I would say it rhythmically so that they could follow along. Then the next time that they came to class, we would do the activity that I'm going to share with you now. So we'd take the whole book again, and we would read it through one time, which doesn't, I mean, it seems like it takes a long time, but it doesn't really take a long time, having them tap that beat, getting that pulse running throughout. And I would make sure I'm reading really rhythmically to them so that they can really feel the meter. And then I would say, oh my gosh, boys and girls, that was so much fun. What if we take every character from here and we find an instrument for it? Oh yeah, oh my God, you're the greatest, yeah, instruments! And so we would choose instruments for each of the characters. Now, this is super awesome for classroom teachers to do too. And this was one of the books that I recommended to the first grade teacher that came to me and was like, oh my gosh, what do I do with that box of instruments? Because this is a great way to do that. We would also probably, gosh, I just lost what I was going to say. We would also recommend maybe like Mortimer, or I Know an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly, or Alex and the Terrible, No Good, Very Bad, Awful, Sucky. What is that title? Okay, we all know which one I'm talking about. Anyway, that one to add sound effects to. So the kids come to class. We've gone over the meter again, kind of to refresh that. And they're starting, by the end of the book, they're starting to say some of the last few lines with me. So we take some time and we pick out instruments that we think will work. I usually have those instruments pre-selected. So I kind of urge them to pick the ones that I've already planned. But if not, I'll just pop some pictures or type in the words to the PowerPoint that I'm projecting so that we can keep up with all the lines. So let me show you what that would look like. Ooh, there I am, close again. Okay, oh look, Barbie Dream House. Okay, so this is like the PowerPoint that I would use with them. And so this is the first verse and it goes up to the last verse. So we would pass out all these instruments. This is an awesome time to talk about the names of the instruments. Like cabasa is a tricky one to remember. And sometimes guero, I get a lot of kids that want to say the fish. And so we talk about that. We pass out the instruments. Everybody tries their part. And then we go through the story again, just using the PowerPoint here. So we would start with this is I think we start with cheese. This is the cheese that lay in the house that Jack built. So the triangles would play ding, 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 and the drums would play that lay in the house that Jack built. So then we're building on each verse. We add another one and another one and another one until finally we're speaking and playing. So we're playing each of the syllables that we're speaking, which is really important for other activities with first grade and kindergarten, definitely. And then we've got this great little rhythm song that goes jingle, jing, jingle, jing, jingle, jing, jingle, click, 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 gong, 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 jing, 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 clack, 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 clack. Was that funny? It's almost like I'm rapping, isn't it? Yo, word to your mother. And so this would be a super awesome activity for that day. They would love it. Now, sometimes that same day, I'm going to switch this back around here. Sometimes that same day, we would go through it, speaking it and playing it so that we're really working on finding those syllables and those patterns. And then sometimes we would try to do it without any words at all. So it would really just be those sounds going on. Now this was a struggle for a lot of my fourth grade classes because they were so intense waiting for their part that sometimes we kind of lost that heartbeat. We kind of lost that that meter, or that what I wanted them to feel. But with practice, it got a little bit better. Now, we weren't perfecting this for a performance or anything like that. Of course you could. This was just a learning activity that I was using to set up. So this activity would be one that I would use as either a review or as an introduction to some of these instruments. For my second graders, it was mostly just review. A couple of the instruments seemed like they were new, even though they weren't. But for my fourth graders, they all knew all of those instruments, and so it was just a really fun way for them to get to practice that. I could have extended the lesson by having them notate the phrases that we were doing, but 6-8 was kind of a struggle for them, and even though they were great rhythm readers and great rhythm decoders, I thought that might be a little bit much for what my goals for that lesson were. So, but after we'd done that, not long after that, it was station time. And I've told you before, I do workstations about every fifth class or so, unless we're preparing for a concert. So then I would go one or two other ways. When I was talking to the first grade teacher about, hey, maybe there are some ways that you can use instruments in your classroom that sound more organized, that help students track, because, you know, as music teachers, we're teaching a lot of skills that kids need to be good readers. We're just doing it with notation instead of letters. So a letter is a symbol for a sound, and a note is a symbol for a sound. So we're teaching the same skills that, you know, the thinking skills. It's still going to go through the same exact way. And so being able to decode, being able to track, being able to play in an ensemble, I thought, I have got this figured out. So let me set this PowerPoint up really quick here. And I'm going to show you one of the stations. Woo, hello, it's me again. I'm going to show you one of the stations that I shared with her. This is the Maracas reading station, and each workstation comes with this little guide to tell them, you know, this is the ta, this is the TT. If you were using this with older kids, chances are they don't need this, but I have it in there just because I see a variety of learners, and if this helps them become successful, yeehaw, you know, I want that. So to use this, the students take turns being a leader. This is when we're in workstations. The leader always says 1, 2, ready, go, and then tracks the music with a pointer. Everyone gets a turn to be leader, and when they're finished, I always add something for this with my workstations. Keep repeating it until it's time to move to the next station. So, well, that was maracas. I'm sorry. I copied and pasted several different slides to make this work, but obviously those are tambourines now, aren't they? So the kids would take this slide. Sometimes I print them out, and sometimes I'll just have them up on a laptop so that they can scroll through them. And so they would play ta, 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 shh. There would be someone up in the front, and they would be leading it with the tambourine. They would point to line B, and they would play ta, sh, ta, sh, ta, ta, sh, sh, ta, 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 sh. And then there are like 10 more cards that they could go through to learn more about that. Now in this, we have 2 sounds on 1 beat. Boys and girls, what do we call 2 sounds on 1 beat? That's TT! And hopefully my 4th graders will be going, oh, those are barred 8th notes. Or they're still saying TT, whatever. And then they would still play through the same way. So it'd be TT ta, TT ta, and so on. And this is great, 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 great practice. So I shared this with that teacher, and she was in love because this was kind of what she was looking for, something that would still keep them learning and exploring, but it was really, really organized. So I use these stations, even with my 5th graders, I use them sometimes, and they really just enjoy getting a chance to play the instruments. But I have them for hand drum and cowbell, you know, because always more cowbell. And I have a rhythm stick one. That's usually what I start everybody on. And triangle. And did I say I have a rhythm instruments that's got like 4 different ones in there? And this is awesome. This is a great way to add a musical workstation in a regular classroom, and it's a great way to reinforce beat and division of the beat and reading music, you know, from left to right and top to bottom and so on in class. And they love being the leader. So another activity that I might do after the house that Jack built is one called Mystery Instruments. Ooh. So Mystery Instruments requires an instrument, preferably an instrument that will fit in like a gift bag or a lunch bag. I ran out of bags, so all I have is a Spider-Man lunch bag, but don't worry, that just makes me cooler. So I take the lunch bag and I'm going to put an instrument in. I do this before the class gets there. I'll drop it in the bag. And because I don't trust those sneaky boogers, when I put this in, I staple it like a mad woman so that they can't pull the top off. And then as I'm introducing, because I always introduce all my workstations before we get started so that everybody's had a little bit of instruction before they jump into the stations. And so I tell them a couple of rules about the station. They're going to use their detective skills to figure out what instrument is in this bag. And I have sheets for them where they can answer some questions and they can just make some deductions and assumptions about what is and isn't in here. Maybe even sketch out what they think could be in there. And so I tell them, whenever you get the bag, you can touch it. You can't wrap the bag around the instrument to figure out what it is. That's why gift bags work really, really good, because they're a little bit stiffer, so it's harder to squeeze them in and mold it around the instrument. And they can't shake it so much that other groups that are in other workstations can hear it and figure it out, because we don't want anyone to figure it out until they get to the workstation and they do the detective work themselves. And so I usually say, oh, if there's only one group that gets the right answer, they get a treat from the goodie box. oh my gosh. And so that helps with the secrecy a little bit. It totally even works on 4th and 5th graders. No lie. I have a really, really great goodie box. So then I'll put the bag in the workstation, and they can touch it and they can shake it a little bit, but they can't mold it around there. They can't rip it. They can't make a lot of noise with it if it's a noisy instrument. So then at the workstation, they've got the bag with the instrument. Here's my prepared bag. And then they'll get these worksheets. Now these are all in a download from my website. It's called Mystery Instruments, and I've linked to it up at the top where it says resources links for this episode. You can find out where these are. And some are easier, like they don't take a lot of questions. It's more like just describe it in your own way, which might be best for younger learners. And then others of them are a little bit more detailed. And so they ask questions, excuse me. They ask questions like, what is the size of this instrument? Well, if we're dealing with a lunch bag, we're probably gonna wanna go with small, right? Does it fill the bag? Well, then they've gotta feel around. Now this one doesn't completely feel the bag. Oh, and it feels like maybe there are 2 pieces in there. Any guesses what's in the bag before I go on? Go ahead, pop your answers in. I might ask, does this instrument make a sound when it's shaken? All right, so listen if you're still guessing the instrument. Did you hear anything unusual other than the bag sounds? Now, what are some other clues that I've discovered about this instrument? Well, I can feel 2 different pieces, and I don't think they're the same size. I don't think they're 2 of the same thing. I think that there's something different than that. So that might be a clue I would write down. And then I want them to write down 5 instruments they know that are absolutely not in the bag. There is not a tabano in this bag. There is not a piano in this bag. Now, even though some of these guesses sound like ridiculous, it's okay. As they do this, it gets a little bit easier and they get a little bit less crazy with it's a saxophone or whatever. It gets a little bit better. So if they want to guess a crazy answer or whatever, ha ha ha, they're so funny, it's fine. And then I'll say, okay, well then sketch what you think is in the bag, and that's also on the paper. And sometimes they've already figured out what the instrument is, so they just sketch the instrument. And other times, this is when they figure out what the instrument is as they try to draw it down in the space that's provided. And then at the end, it always says, based on the evidence that I have collected, I believe this instrument is whatever you think it is. So then usually their team all agrees on the same answer, usually, but not always. And I'm telling them that's fine. You know, if it's your whole group and your whole group gets it right, you get a prize. And if you're the one that, you know, didn't get it right, you won't get a prize. But if you're the only one that got it right, testify. So then after all of the kids have rotated, so this is like 5 stations, like 50 minutes, all of the kids have rotated through. Before they leave, they're all lined up at the door. They're like, tell us, what's in the maraca? And then I'll open the bag and show them that it was a TikTok block. It'll be like, oh, I knew it, or oh, I thought it was claves, or whatever. But what they're doing is they're using those deductive reasoning skills, and they're using what they know about the instruments. Well, this felt like wood, and there were 2 parts that obviously weren't the same size on that. It didn't jingle or that was that. Oh, did I lose you? I had a little flashy thing go on. Did I lose you? Come back. Okay, I'm going to keep going on. My little flashy thing disappeared. So this is an awesome activity. When I do this activity, I usually like to try it as a whole class first, like maybe there's 5 or 10 minutes or so left at the end of class, and I'll pass the bag around and I'll project the worksheet with the questions on the board, and we'll kind of walk through it like, oh, what could it not be? And do you think that it's all, thank you, do you think that it's all, you know, one piece, or what could it be? And this is a great way to kind of review instrument names and characteristics. I I've used this up through 5th grade easily in Workstations because they enjoy that and they're able to fill out the worksheets completely. And it usually doesn't take them very long. So the 5 to 8 minutes that they might have at that workstation is usually more than enough time for them to fill out that sheet. So these are just a couple of ideas for workstations that use non-pitch percussion instruments that aren't going to make your head hurt and make you crazy during the rotation time. I would still recommend that you don't do more than 2 noisy stations at a time, just because that's going to be chaotic for the kids. And rather than being upset about the noise, it tends to make them want to be louder, and then that makes you crazy. So I would recommend that you give mystery instruments a try. You don't have to have the worksheets that I've created for you to use with this, not at all. Throw an instrument in a bag and lead your class in a discussion, or have your own set of questions. But if you want them, they're available in my store. I would definitely check out the reading stations too. I copy a lot of mine and put them all in one binder, and then just take out the ones that I don't want them to do. So I may set a whole tub of rhythm instruments there if they're going to do several different of those stations. Like everybody has a maraca, everybody has a tambourine, everybody has the cowbell, and then there are mixed parts. This is just a way to get them playing and reading every time we do rotations, and it's a great way to help them with their vocabulary in describing instruments and naming those instruments that maybe we don't play every single week, but that we play pretty often. Again, I'm still surprised by some names that they forget. I had we took a quiz in 3rd grade last week, and it was over a lot of these instruments we've talked about tonight. We had used every day since the first day of school. We had been practicing them. We did Artie Almeida's hoop groups. Love you, Artie. We had done a steady beat kind of game with them too, passing them all around, named them like crazy. And I'm grading one of the papers, and it's multiple choice, and I read all the answers to them. I have a lot of diverse learners, and so reading makes sure that, you know, we are kind of all on a same level playing field. And someone missed triangle. It was a picture of the instrument, and the other choices were like a go-go gong and hand drum, and they didn't choose triangle. Ay, ay, ay. So... oh, it was just one of those weeks last week, I guess. But I swear, despite that, these are great activities that you can use in your classroom for non-pitch percussion workstations. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will definitely get back to them later tonight. All right, see you guys.